Hello students and welcome to the English YouTuber. In today's video, we are going to study the story Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. So this is an excerpt from the autobiography of Nelson Mandela. So excerpt means an extract or a portion from his autobiography. So let's start. 10th May dawned bright and clear. For the past few days, I had been pleasantly besieged. So besieged means surrounded by. Dignitaries means an important person holding a high rank or position. And world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. So the inauguration was on 10th May, and before that, many important dignitaries and world leaders had come to meet him. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. That is why it was very close to Nelson Mandela, because the inauguration would bring about the largest gathering ever of international leaders to be on the South African soil. The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheatre formed by the Union Building of Pretoria. This could be a question. Where would the ceremonies be held? So this is the answer. For decades, so a decade is 10 years. So for decades means many years. This had been the seat of white supremacy. So only the white-skinned people were allowed. And now it was the site of a rainbow gathering. So why has he written rainbow gathering? Because of people of all color and race were allowed. Of different colors. So color here is mentioned of the skin. And nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. So the ceremony was the installation of the first democratic non-racial government, because until then, for many years, there was racial discrimination against the dark-skinned people. What was the inauguration about? On the lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Zenani. On the podium, Mr. De Klerk was first sworn in as second deputy president. Then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as first deputy president. When it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the Constitution and to devote myself to the well-being of the Republic and its people. So he is taking his oath that he will devote his life towards the well-being of the people. To the assembled guests and the watching world, I said. So this is exactly the words that was quoted by him. Today, all of us do, by our presence here, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. So what is liberty? Liberty is freedom or independence. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long. So here, the extraordinary human disaster that he's talking is about racial discrimination by the white-skinned people against the dark-skinned people. That lasted too long. Must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. So he's saying we have suffered a lot for many years, but now we have to form a society in which the entire humanity will be proud of, and there is going to be no discrimination against people. We who were outlaws not so long ago. So outlaws are like outcasted people who were not included or accepted in their own country, where they were treated like illegal people or criminals. So we were considered like outcasts not long ago, have today been given the rare privilege to host to the nations of the world on our own soil. So he's saying it is a privilege that we who were considered criminals have been given the privilege to host people from all nations of the world in our own country. We thank all of our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country of what is, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. So he is thanking the international guest for coming and taking part in this inauguration, because it is a victory for justice, because no person should be discriminated because of the color of their skin. And there wasn't peace because there was always fighting and injustice, and it is a part of human dignity now. We have at last achieved our political emancipation. So emancipation means freedom, or another word for freedom is liberty. We pledge ourselves. So pledge means we take oath to liberate all our people from the continued bondage of poverty. So we're saying now we are going to liberate. Liberate is free everybody from the bondage of poverty, deprivation, because they were denied, because of suffering, gender and other discrimination. So a lot of injustice was done to the people. So now Nelson Mandela is saying we are going to free all the people from the bondage of all the difficulties and unjust things that had happened to them. Because these non-white South Africans had to live in isolation. They were forced outside their own house because they were given a separate locality to live in. They were not allowed to mix with the whites. They were not allowed to use public transport or go to restaurants and eat. They were denied education. These people were not given high-paying jobs. They were given work as laborers. They were denied voting rights. So a lot of injustice was done to them, and he's saying that now no more. Now everybody can live free. Never, never and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. So he's saying never will anyone face abuse or cruelty or any unjust treatment. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. So it's a great human achievement that we have fought against apartheid. The apartheid is this racial discrimination. So he's saying the sun shall never set on such a great achievement. Let freedom reign. So let freedom rule. God bless Africa. So this was his beautiful speech that he gave. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe. Awe means admiration or wonder. We say, no, I was awestruck. As a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters and troop carriers rode in perfect formation over the Union building. It was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. So what did these jets signify? If they ask you that question, then you have to write this answer. That not only did it display pinpoint precision, but also the military's loyalty to a democracy, to a new government that has been fairly elected, because people have been elected not because of their color, but because of their caliber. Only moments before, the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by. So all these highest generals in the defense force and the police who had a lot of ribbons and medals and laurels that they had, it was on their chest, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. So they saluted him. I was not unmindful. So if you see here, there are two negatives. So when two negatives come, it is positive. So I was not unmindful means he was mindful of the fact that not so many years before, they would not have saluted but arrested me. So he's saying, I remember that now they are saluting me, but before they would have arrested him. But now they are saluting him. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue, and gold of the new South African flag. So he's saying now they are saluting me, but I know that even if it was a few years before, they wouldn't hesitate to arrest me and put me behind bars. The day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems and the vision of whites singing Kosi Sikileli Africa and blacks singing Die Stem, the old anthem of the Republic. So here he's saying it is symbolizing the union or the merging of the whites and the blacks because both the national anthems were played. So this was the national anthem of the blacks. This is Kosi Sikileli Africa, and the blacks were singing the anthem of the whites, which is Die Stem. So although the day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem they once despised. Despised means hated. That day they did not know the lyrics of the anthem that they hated. The whites hated the anthem of the blacks and the blacks hated the anthem of the whites. But they would soon know the words by heart because it shows the merging of both of them. On the day of the inauguration, I was first overwhelmed. So what is overwhelmed? Full of emotions with the sense of history in the first decade of the 20th century. So the first decade of the 20th century means could be from 1901 until 1910. So between this time. A few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War and before my own birth, the white-skinned people of South Africa patched up. Patched up means joined together. Patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned people of their own land, not even of a different country, of their own. That itself shows how wrong it was. So this is apartheid. The white-skinned people all joined together and erected a system against these dark-skinned people. The structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhuman societies the world has ever known. Because a lot of wrong had been done. Now, in the last decade of the 20th century, so which is the last decade of the 20th century? Could be 1990 until 2000. And my own 8th decade as a man. So 8th decade means he's 80 years old. That system had been overturned forever and replaced by one that recognized the rights and freedom of all the people, regardless of the color of their skin. That day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people. So he is not taking entire credit for what has happened. So he is paying tribute to all the other freedom fighters and also the common people. People whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. I felt that day, as I have on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. That long and noble line ended and now began again with me. He's paying tribute to all the other African patriots who had died before him, but they have undergone a lot of suffering to come up to this day. I was pained that I was not able to thank them and that they were not able to see what their sacrifices had wrought. Wrought means brought about. So this day was possible because of the sacrifices of all those people for so many years that has brought about such a beautiful day of freedom. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. There was a wound. All of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from that profound hurt. Profound means deep hurt. So he's saying we cannot forget what we were subjected to, and also the recovery from that will not be easy because the hurt is intense. But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect. But this oppression and brutality actually brought about something positive. So let's see, what did it bring? And that was that it produced the Oliver Tambors, the Walter Sicilis, Chief Lutlis, the Yusuf Dados, the Bram Fishers, the Robert Sobukques of our time, men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom, and generosity that their like may never be known again. So these were some of the prominent figures who fought against apartheid. Perhaps it requires such depths of oppression to create such heights of character. So here, what he's trying to say is, because these people had to go through such dire situations of hardships, of barriers, of adversity, of injustice, and so much oppression, that it created such people of resilience and courage and generosity. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its ground. But I have always known that its greatest wealth is the people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. So we all know that Africa is rich with minerals. Below the soil there are diamonds, but he's saying that the greatest wealth of my country is not the gems that lie beneath the soil, but it is the people who are finer and better than the purest diamonds. So here Nelson Mandela is saying that just like how diamonds are made under pressure, because diamonds are pieces of coal which is subjected to extreme pressure and fire, which has made that piece of coal into diamond. Just like that, these challenging situations has made all these great leaders what they are today. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. So it is from them that we learned what courage is. Time and again, I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. I have seen men stand up to attack and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. So defies means go against. So here he's saying he has learned what courage is from the people, from them being so strong that even when they were tortured, they did not give up. And them showing strength and resilience in such difficult situations, which is beyond imagination. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear. This is a very important line, by the way, but the triumph over it. So he's saying courage means, it does not mean that the person does not have fear. The person has fear, but they are triumphing over it. So the courage is more than the fear. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid. Brave men also feel afraid, but he conquers the fear. So he defeats the fear. So here they could ask you questions of, what did Nelson Mandela learn about courage? So this is the answer. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. Exactly. No one is born with those feelings of hatred. They are taught by the people in the surrounding. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can also be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. So he's saying there can be a change in the society. Love comes naturally to humans. It's an innate quality. Innate means inborn quality. So if people can be taught to love, they can definitely learn not to hate other people. Even in the grimmest times in prison. So grimmest means the most miserable time, where he was subjected to extreme torture. When my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards. So even for a few seconds, he would see a little bit of humanity in the eyes of those guards who are subjecting them to hardship. But it was enough to reassure me and keep me going. Because man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. So, what reassured Nelson Mandela even in the grimmest of times in the prison? This could be a question. So, you can say a glimmer of humanity, even for a few seconds in one of the guards, gave him hope or reassured him that a man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden or concealed, but never extinguished. In life, every man has two obligations. Okay, so this is also another important question. What are the two twin obligations according to Nelson Mandela that every man has? First is obligations to his family, which includes his parents, his wife, his children, and his obligation to his people, his community, his country. So these are the two obligations that every person has. One is to the family and one is to his community and his country. In a civil and human society, each man is able to fulfill those obligations according to his own inclinations and abilities. So here what he is saying is, in a free society, everyone is able to fulfill these obligations by helping other people or taking care of the family. But in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth. Now, my birth means he's talking about his skin color, being dark skinned, his birth and color, to fulfill both of these obligations. He's saying, because I was born as a dark skinned person, I failed to fulfill both the obligations. In South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. That is so harsh, isn't it? He was even not allowed to live as a human being, which is a basic requirement of humanity. In South Africa, a man who tries to fulfill his duty to his people was inevitably ripped from his family. So, unfortunately, the person who was trying to fulfill the duty towards his people and towards his family was separated from them, and his home was forced to live a life apart, could be in jail. A twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. So, twilight means in semi darkness. I did not in the beginning choose to place my people above my family. So, in the beginning, he gave his family top priority and then his people. But in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligations as a son. So, he said when he tried to serve his people, he realized that he was also prevented from fulfilling his obligations to his family as a son, as a brother, as a father, and as a husband. So when he was serving his people, he realized that he could not even fulfill his duties to his family. I was not born with a hunger to be free. So he's saying when I was born, I did not have this urge to be free. I was born free. Free in every way that I could know. Free to run in the fields near my mother's hut, free to swim in the clear streams that ran through my village, free to roast mealies under the stars. So mealies is corn cob, corn under the stars, and ride the broad backs of slow-moving bulls. So he says when he was young, he did not know about this racial discrimination and everything. So he felt that he was free because he was free to do anything, whatever he desired, as long as he obeyed his father and abided by the customs of his tribe. Abided by means followed the customs. I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. So he was not troubled by all these laws that people had made. It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion. He was saying the freedom that I thought I was free was not real. It was only an illusion. When I discovered as a young man that my freedom had already been taken from me, that I began to hunger for it. So when he realized that he had no freedom, it was already taken away from him, that his hunger began to seek freedom. At first, as a student, I wanted freedom only for myself. So at that time, he did not think about his society or for the greater good. He thought only about himself. The transitory freedom of being able to stay out at night, read what I pleased, what I enjoyed, and go where I chose. Later, as a young man in Johannesburg, I yearned for the basic and honorable freedom of achieving my potential, of earning my keep, of marrying and having a family, the freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life. So later, when he became a young man, he realized that he was not having freedom in anything. He could not have freedom in achieving his potential because they were given laborer jobs. They were not given good jobs or white collar jobs. They did not earn how much they deserved. They could not marry anybody. Interracial marriage was not allowed. So he realized that he was obstructed from every way. But then I slowly saw that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were not free. So he realized that people from his own race, even they were not. I saw that it was not just my freedom that I was curtailed. Curtailed means stopped, controlled, curbed. But the freedom of everyone who looked like I did because of his color. That is when I joined the African National Congress, and that is when the hunger for my own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of my people. Finally, he said, when he realized that all his type of people were oppressed, he decided to fight for everyone. It was this desire for the freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity and self-respect that animated my life. So his life's greatest goal after joining the African National Congress was for his kind of people to have dignity and self-respect because they were treated worse than animals. That transformed a frightened young man into a bold one. That drove a law-abiding attorney to become a criminal. So until then, he was a frightened man. He always followed the rules, but after that, he became a courageous one. He became a criminal because he did not follow those rules. He went against them. He fought for his rights. That turned a family-loving husband to a man without a home. So he was in isolation. That forced a life-loving man to live like a monk because without his family. I am no more virtuous or self-sacrificing than the next man. He's saying I am not praising myself and saying I'm the best or I'm the most self-sacrificing person than the person next to me. But I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and limited freedom I was allowed when I knew my people were not free. So even a very little freedom that he had, he said I could not enjoy it, realizing that there were other people suffering. Freedom is indivisible. The chains on another of my people were the chains on all of them. The chains on all of my people were the chains on me. So he said, everybody was chained, and I felt the weight of the chain on my shoulders, and I felt the need to fight for everyone and make everybody free. I knew that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressor. This is again a very important question. What does Nelson Mandela talk about the oppressor and the oppressed? So oppressor is the person who is doing all these injustice things, like who controls, who's a tyrant. The white people. So he said even the white people must be liberated or freed just as how these dark-skinned people were. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. So they are in prison, but they are also imprisoned because they are imprisoned by hate. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. So he is also locked behind. So what is prejudice? Prejudice means having a preconceived notion or an opinion without any judgment or without any reason. You are just thinking कि ये लोग ऐसे ही होते हैं. And narrow-mindedness. I am not truly free if I am taking away someone else's freedom. So the people who take away freedom are also not free. They are also in prison. Just as surely as I am not free when my freedom is taken from me, the oppressed and the oppressors alike are robbed of their humanity. So both are robbed of their humanity and both should be liberated or freed. Because even the oppressors are as much imprisoned as much as the oppressed people are. Wasn't this a beautiful autobiography by Nelson Mandela? It shows how selflessly he sacrificed everything that was dear to him for the freedom of his people. It was indeed a long walk to freedom, but finally they received the freedom that they deserve. I'm so proud of you for watching this video until the end. So you have also shown determination and dedication to get good marks in your examination. Study well, practice numerous amount of times for your examination. God bless, and don't forget I am praying for you.